Good morning to you.
Good morning, Coach. How we doing? All right.
Good, good. We got legendary football coach and assemblyman, Benji Wimberly. Let's see, Patterson Catholic. I mean, maybe he coached somewhere before that. We'll find that. I find that out. But obviously, really became a legendary coach at Patterson Catholic. Most people would know Victor Cruz. That was one of his players when he was at Patterson Catholic, and he had tons of superstars there. I coached against him. I'm going to ask him if he was at Patterson Catholic back when I was playing. I know he came in there as an assistant. I just don't remember exactly when, so I'm going to try to figure that out. And then obviously was in Hackensack for quite a few years as well. Multiple state championships. And I don't know, did you ever, back when you were, did you guys play? No, Patterson Catholic might have been by the time you were in, no,
they were still there.
BPS, no, but BPSO was still, I was gonna say still intact, right? It was a few more years, only a few more years after that it wasn't, but
I coached against him when he was at Hackensack and we were at Bosco.
Okay.
And there was also a lot of ties in terms of he had a lot of those athletes and he was looking to kind of do something different a little bit and get them more in space and whatnot. So I know that for a little while, I know he used to come around to kind of learn the run and shoot, when we were in high school and whatnot. So, and then ultimately I played with Vic I played with Victor Cruz when we were in the North-South game. So always had a good relationship with him. He's been a great, you know what I mean? He's an advocate for a lot of stuff. He does a lot of that type of work. But when he was at Patterson Catholic, man, that thing was rolling.
Yeah, Patterson Catholic was a powerhouse. Patterson Catholic, when I first entered high school, was the team that was like an easy win. And then by the time I left high school, they had, and this might have been, maybe Benji was an assistant there, but I'm not sure. I'll ask him. But they had a guy named Stanley Jackson. I don't know if you know that name, but Stanley Jackson, we played against him my senior year. He was he was a quarterback, played at Ohio State, what led them to the Rose Bowl. And he was the first superstar. But even interesting, even before that, and this is before Coach Wimberly became the head coach, my sophomore year in high school, the quarterback for Patterson Catholic was Vito Campanelli.
Yeah.
When he was a freshman. So they were beginning to really kind of change things. And then Benji took it to a whole nother level. Obviously have a multitude of superstars. We used to have some, when I was a first and assistant, and we'll go back and we'll talk about it a little bit when he gets on. But when I was first an assistant, my first 2 years as an assistant coach, we played them my first year in this crazy overtime game at Saddlebrook. We won it, but and then the next year they came in and they had this kid. You remember Kip Pommels? Remember him?
Kip Pommels was an absolute freak show.
Yeah, he.
So you think about him and Victor Cruz on the same team.
He almost decapitated Anthony Pomo. And or no, maybe someone else was the cat, and then he picked it up and ran it in for a touch. It was a close game, we they had a lot of speed. We actually had Anthony Pomo, who was a lightning rod, and then they took that fumble, took it over from that point forward, because we had Lucas Quellar. He was great too. He was a great player.
I mean, he's always, like I said, it was a lot of stuff that it was. I mean, listen, it was a shame when you actually heard that program was going to be folding.
Yeah.
Because they kind of really had a great track record of not only, being high level talent wise, but really just kind of taking kids that really wouldn't have really gotten a shot like that. And just the whole school setting in itself, right? They just produced a lot of guys that got to the next level, and, it all starts with up top. So, it was really a shame when that was kind of starting to come to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
and then I remember they were small,
what did they do with Patterson Catholic, by the way? What is it Patterson Charter now?
Might be. I'm really not sure. I'm sure Coach would be
Yeah. I thought they put a school changed. I don't remember, But yeah, and it was amazing. Like, did you ever play there? You never played there, right? So they didn't have like they had a field.
Yeah, but it wasn't like
It wasn't like it was like so it wasn't like they were working with like these facilities. You know what I mean?
No, they didn't really have. And like I said, it was group one, so it was small. There wasn't really a lot of kids, right? So it was kind of just like, hey,
No, but they had talent. They had lots of talent.
Quality over quantity with that group. I mean, I remember they all played both ways, right? Like, I mean, I remember Kip Pommel's literally doing like everything.
Yeah.
I mean, starting quarterbacks would be playing defense and returning kicks and doing all that. And at the end of the day, it really didn't matter.
I would say that was that was the big run of the big last run of the small schools really having like that was your years. Glenn,
because like because that was 2000. That would have been 2003. Yeah, that would have been 2003, 2004-ish type of right when it was kind of like and I was listening, and then I know he moved on to Hackensack, which was but I mean, you're talking Hackensack. I mean, we played them when we were at Bosco. That's when the bigwigs used to still play against those guys, public school wise and whatnot. So. It was it was definitely something. I mean, it was really kind of the end of an era,
Yep, I would say like it lasted maybe another half decade to a decade, like hung on, and then eventually the small schools started to really like what happened to us at Powell Park, and then we built it back, but then that started to happen other places. Like we were really like I don't want to say the OG of the bad things happening, right? But we were like one of the first groups that had that happen, and we rebuilt it up with the co-op. But now you see this like there's a lot of that at the smaller schools in North Jersey, not just co-op, or they go into the smaller division. I say that like. And I can't wait to talk to Benji about this because it was like there was a run, like people other places in
they didn't have runs like that.
No, well, most places around, probably even the country, there's probably very few places where small schools at one time really had significance. We talked about this offline, how in Bergen County and Passaic County. And even Morris County too. You have group 1, group 2 schools, each town having their own school, right? Everything now, like where we live now, is much more region in Central and South Jersey is much more regionalized. But for a long time, that was like one of the great and unique things that you actually had really good small school football. Like there was a lot of good players that used to come out of small schools. Like if you go around the country, when I talk from a recruiting standpoint, that's always like anyone who plays for a small school around the country in these smaller schools, that's always their biggest complaint is players don't get looked at from small schools. Well, in North Jersey, in your era, in my era, and even before me, that like 70s, 80s, that
used to happen.
That happened. Like you had a guy every year go from a handful of guys from small schools in New Jersey go big places.
I think a lot of that kind of has been hampered on when, now you see a lot of these, hey, if I'm from this small town, right, I know I'm not going to get, or I'm thinking I'm not going to get the right looks. So now I'm going to go to the bigger private, or I'm going to go, you know what I mean? I'm going to make that move because now there's just more notoriety, right? Like they're coming in there anyway. It's not like, hey, I got to go find a diamond in the rough. They're kind of already there, and then they can kind of do that. So I think with the growth of the other, the private schools, I think that's kind of been a thing that's kind of, pseudo killed those small school good player type of things. Let me check out Coach here. He just texted me.
I forward you also the email link.
Yeah, I saw it. Let me just double check. Yeah.
But I think I'll talk for a couple seconds about it. But I think
go ahead.
That was a unique time period. And I would say around the country. And I'd love to know, because obviously this is a nationwide podcast, but I'd love to know other places around the country, because I'm more curious than anything if there are places like that. Like maybe you get places in like Boston or Chicago, I don't know, where there's high population density or where you might have small schools. But I always found that to be one of the very, very unique things that North Jersey did have. I mean, obviously they still have small schools playing, football. But at one time, you really had some small schools, and what was really cool was like I remember back when I was first an assistant, like you had Patterson Catholic, Saddlebrook, sometimes obviously Glen Rock. You had Butler sometimes. You had Pompton Lake sometimes. Like they could be in the top 10 ranking in all of North Jersey, which was such an interesting thing. Like I remember those teams being ranked in the top 10 of North Jersey over a lot of bigger schools. And I think that was an interesting that pride that you would have playing for your small school. I mean, I guess some of that has gone away now because obviously the bigger schools have taken a huge precedent and football recruiting has changed dramatically. But I think that was one of the great unique things that North Jersey football had over. Is he okay?
Yeah, we should be all good. He's just getting situated. He should be all right.
But
I resent him the link and everything, so he's all fine. Not a problem. But listen, you're right. I mean, think about it. Even now, where we've seen kind of the small schools, right? And you and I have discussed this before, where the smaller school powerhouses have really kind of moved to, or really now looked at more as South Jersey, right? Like outside Philly, that type of area.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
When you're talking about those types of schools, but even with that, right, I think it also correlates and talks about like, so even those group ones or small schools down south are bigger, like population wise than up north. When you're talking like literally every town has a school that's okay here. This is just the town population, right? Because group ones, just because you're a group one doesn't mean you're not a big group one, right? So down south, like more to draw from. Also, the private schools down south aren't as prevalent as the private schools up north. So those kids just stay at their school and kind of go there. Whereas, you take a look at the other stuff and up north, it's like, hey, best player is Cedar Grove, right? Tommy DeVito doesn't go to Cedar Grove. He ends up at Bosco. Or, could you imagine Tommy DeVito running playing at Cedar Grove, which is a school that, and I'm just
and they're still good.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, they're still like, you know what I mean? So imagine some of these smaller schools keeping some of their talent. And I mean, you look at programs like Mountain Lakes, excellent at keeping talent, obviously, academic wise, like it's just a better pull. Some of those types of programs where you look at it, I mean, but perennial powerhouses that used to be now really not so much because you lose, and you and I both know, group one, you lose your best player. That's a big thing. He's the quarterback. He's the safety. He's a return guy. He never leaves the field. You lose one of those guys, it could really shift your entire team in terms of, when we're talking small stuff.
No, there's no doubt. And you're right about South Jersey. You're right because now you have Willingboro. It's a lot of it. Willingboro, Glassboro. Some of those schools used to be bigger schools that their population shrunk a little bit.
Right.
And like Willingboro is the home of Carl Lewis. That used to be a Group 4 school or Group 3 school, and now they're a Group 1 school, right? And they're a Group 1 powerhouse. And so it's interesting. But you're right. Around the Philly area, there's actually quite a few of those schools that are powers. And I remember Paulsboro. Remember Paulsboro?
Yeah.
Paulsboro used to be a mega power in football. Mega powerhouse. Like, I'm sure they're probably still good in wrestling, right? But you used to have to play Belvedere, right? I don't even know if Belvedere.
Oh, yeah, Belvedere, all the way out there.
Used to be a powerhouse, dude.
Very much.
Used to be a powerhouse. Would go undefeated and they get smacked in the playoffs. But
correct. But I mean, listen, but that was always the thing, right? And let me just get Coach here set up, and that was always kind of the thing too, was like, look, like that's why we always felt like it was just different in terms of that, because, we now were, like I said, like we had already played all these tough teams all year. And now all of a sudden, here we are, going into the playoffs and, oh, this team is this and this team is that. And, they hadn't played who we played, You know what I mean? Like that wasn't, and it always seemed to work in our favor, because we had played such tough teams, right?
No, there's no doubt about it. It was, and the what was the league that you guys
So
were?
we were Northern Hills Conference.
Was it always Northern
We
Hills
were
for
there was the Skyline, which was the bigger division, and
Okay.
then we were in the Suburban, which was like the smaller guys. But and by small guys, I'm talking Pequannock, Caldwell, Montville,
right, group twos.
Madison's, twos, threes, Newark West Side, right? Like we were playing some hammers,
Yeah,
and then in the upper division, in that Skyline division, was teams like Del Barton, like West Orange, okay, like Milburn, like bigger schools that were just a lot, and then you would have like a crossover game or kind of whatever. But it was to a point like, a lot of teams, like we would just be so prepared getting into the playoffs. And like I said, my senior year was kind of when it all started to trickle a little bit, right? Because now they switched up the playoffs stuff and we were now playing those Bergen County teams. So my senior year was the first time that we had played like Cresthill in the first round and ended up with Glen Rock, right? Or Saddlebrook was in our bracket. Whereas traditionally it was, a Belvedere, New Providence, a Madison, Mountain Lakes was always on our side, Boonton, all of those types of teams, Morris County based, and then, when we started to expand into that, where the group ones in Bergen County, that had always been the kind of back and forth was like, hey, can these Morris County teams play with these smaller Bergen County teams that are pretty good? And, that was just kind of where it started to move.
It's interesting. I'm just looking. One of my favorite sites to get historical information, but I don't know if it's updated all the way. But it's definitely updated with the old stuff. Is that BergenPassagicFootball.com? Have you ever been on there?
No, never.
It's great. It's great. It has every. I don't know when it stops. It stops at. Might stop at 2021, but it has every record of every team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it has every record of every team all time. It has.
Gridiron does that. Gridiron, New Jersey has all that.
Gridiron, no. I'm away from the past, like
yeah, they go all the way back to since the site started.
The 70s. This goes back to the 70s. This goes back to, and it has every all league, all stuff like that. It has all for every high school in Bergen.
So that's for every still living their dream type person.
No, it shows you all the history. It's
Yeah, those guys that back in 1997.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Coach,
what's up, guys? Sorry about this.
Got the Patterson Rec shirt on. There we go.
Coach, thanks so much. Really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Yes, definitely. Glad to get on, guys.
Looking good, man.
We were before you came on. We were just taking a long walk past memory lane and how great. And I was just saying how for many years, I mean, talking like maybe 60s and 70s, all the way till maybe the early 2010s, that probably was the end of it being great, was all this, how great the small schools used to be in North Jersey. And, and obviously, the precipice was obviously you coaching at Patterson Catholic, the programs that you had. And I was talking about when I was first an assistant, when we played you guys and the battles we had, and then I was a head coach, and we used to meet at the Dunkin' Donuts over at Fairlawn Exchange.
No more film exchanges. No more Charlie Bloods. None of that good stuff. No.
I mean, those were as a coach, those were some of my favorite things because like that's how I would in today's era I would have never even got to know you. You know what I mean? Like, because we just exchange on huddle and we shake hands at halftime at the end of the game, at the end of the game, or whatever. But you got the opportunity to really like get to know other coaches. But it was amazing how for so many years, like 50 plus years, North Jersey small schools like had a presence, and not just a presence. We're talking about how many like Division I football players would come out of those schools.
Yeah.
It was amazing, and you were a huge part of it. I went and looked it up. 1995 was your first year as head coach, right?
Yes. Yes. I was at Eastside before that. Yes.
Oh, you were at
That's
Eastside
right.
before
Okay,
that.
yeah, that's what we're going through.
Did you coach? Were you at all an assistant with Lou Mathis, or you came and replaced Lou Mathis?
No, I came in after Lou Mathis, and
Okay.
the funny story is Lou Mathis is the person who really got me into coaching. He was my neighbor. He lived across the street from me growing up.
Wow.
So he was a neighborhood star, Ohio State World Football
Yeah,
League.
not a
So
bad mentor there.
yeah. So that's one of my main reasons I got into coaching was Lou.
That's absolutely amazing, and right so that makes sense as to why Stanley Jackson went to Ohio State. Then I guess.
Yeah.
And obviously you coached a million superstars, but obviously most famous Victor Cruz, right? And
Yes.
I remember back in I'm trying to remember Victor Cruz the same year as you, Derek.
Yeah, Vic graduated with me in 03.
So
well, 03, I'm sorry, 04-03 season.
04. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I remember we were getting ready to play you guys. It was the year you also had the year before we beaten you guys in a great overtime game, amazing game. And then the next year you had Kip Pommels and Victor Cruz and a host of guys. And we had Anthony Pomo was our quarterback, very fast.
The little guy, the little
guy.
I hated Anthony. I'm like, this guy's a pain in the butt. The rule of the week was if he goes to the bathroom, hit him. He goes to the concession stand, hit him. That was the rule of the day. Like we practiced for you guys the week before. We're not losing this game. I'll tell you that right now. This is gonna happen. Hit him. Yes.
And what was funny, I was just saying that it was back and forth, and then we ran the option to our sideline. I don't remember if it was Kip Pommels who picked up
Kip Pommels makes the hit, rolls over, scoops up the ball, and scores.
That changed the game.
Changed the game. And the funnier part is, whoever that kid was, your ball boys start cheering for us, and we laugh to this day about it. So the ball boy from Saddlebrook is cheering for Patterson Catholic on the sideline. Like, what is this? I'm like, who is that kid?
Everybody knows when there's a good show in town.
Oh, that hit was unbelievable. And I remember, and not only was that a huge play as far as score wise, it changed the whole entire game, but Anthony Pomo for the first time, he was running wild on all these teams. Derek, he was averaging I'm not kidding.
Listen, remember, this is my senior. This is
that changed it. He was not running the ball the same way the rest of that game.
We had a definite hit out on him. Like, this kid is not going to beat us. This is going to be it. And my defensive coordinator at the time, Darryl Smith, we talked all summer about, all right, this is what we're going to do against this. Because at the time, we had to start beating Glenrock on a regular basis. So you guys become a nemesis now. We get rid of Glenrock, beat them 4 times in a row. And where the hell did Saddlebrook come from? What in the hell? Is this,
Yeah. And then for us, this is I was just explaining this before, this was my senior year. It was the first year where the group for us being a Morris County team with Butler, we had now they had switched up the sections, and now we were going to have to play the Saddlebrooks, the Cresskills, the Glenrocks, and it had always been for years before. Well, Butler's got a high-powered offense, Glenrock's got the high-powered offense, but it was starting to change, and here it is, and we're looking at going Saddlebrook's the number 1 seed. So we had been watching those guys for the entire season. This is what it's going to be. Kind of when we get there. So he was a fast dude.
He was a problem. Definitely a problem.
Yeah, and the teams that you had were so good, and they made big. I remember the one mistake we made in that game. We used to get in this argument. We were arguing over Victor Cruz, and this is true. And you remember, I think John Fragale, was our defensive coordinator at the time.
John, yes.
Yeah, he's a wild guy.
Yes, I remember John.
Oh God, wild guy. So we were arguing about, because I was the DB coach, and we were arguing about how were we going to handle, because you had multiple receivers. Obviously, Victor was great, but you had multiple guys, okay?
There was a whole load of scholarship guys on that team, and Kit.
Yeah, there was a ton of guys.
Yeah, Kit was considered the best player, not Vic.
Right.
So
that's right.
Kit was our guy, But we had a kid, Demetri Perkins, who went to Holy Cross. We had Ray Taylor, who was probably the sleeper out of the bunch because he was the backup quarterback. Yep. And then we had Chenry Lewis, who went to Rutgers at tight end.
Exactly.
So it was
Kerry was
we had some guys.
monster.
Yeah. Mhm.
And when Victor went up and scored, 2 touchdowns against us, I remember I was calling down the booth. I was like, "Oh man, we put the wrong guy. We put one of our best athletes, but he wasn't tall enough. You know what I'm saying? So like he was a great kid, Peter Stewart, great athlete, great football player, but wasn't tall enough. And that was one of our like things because and you remember this even with you guys. Obviously, you had a lot of great players, but depth was always going to be an issue, right? So. You always remember, like, okay, if I put this guy over on this person, now I might take it away from over here, and you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul, like in different positions
Group
all
one
the time.
football. Group
Yeah,
one football.
and you got to figure it out because our running back that year, Tommy Wells, man, weighed 150 pounds.
Yeah.
But he was tough as nails. Like, I remember going to the season and my guys going, we got to find him. Put Kid at running back. I said, I'm not beating Kid up all year. I said, if we need Kid to run the ball, I'll give him the ball. But little man is going to carry the load. He ended up being a 1,000-yard rusher that year. Yep.
That's unbelievable.
I think that was one of these staples, Coach, too, of like, one of your programs too. I mean, I think it kind of comes with the territory as well, being a Group 1 program, but your teams were always tough as hell. Right.
Yeah.
Like
I
don't know if it's I mean, like that was part of the culture, right? It was toughness. Look, if we want to get anywhere, you guys are gonna have to play both ways. You're gonna have to fight through some injuries and some bumps and bruises, and that stuff doesn't really matter. But just that's one staple was always just toughness.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Obviously, with the majority of Patterson kids, but at that point we start getting kids from a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah,
before Bosco and all these guys started doing it, we started getting kids from Newark, from Bergen County, and the funnier part was the battles in practice at Patterson Catholic were brutal. Like we had a mud field, as you know, but before the highlight. We fought in practice more than we did in practice. Like we used to have fights in practice, but then they would walk home and eat together, but it was like competitively, there was not a lot of crybabies involved. Like these guys were like tough as nails. Like, all right, this is my best friend, but I'm not knock the shit out of him when I get the chance. That was that.
No, listen, you can't be soft practicing on that field.
No.
No, there's no way. Like, there's no way you could be soft practicing that field. And when we used to play, when I first came on as an assistant, I said, "Oh, what does Patterson Catholic run?" They spread the ball around, and I remember Fergali's like, "Listen, they'll get in double tight end, okay, and come right downhill." Like, and if we let them do that, he won't run another play other than that play.
True story to this day. And the funny part is, Coach D, you can appreciate this. Mark Mickens and them tried to convince me to become a run and shoot guy. So I used to go to all these Mounts Davis clinics, and people would see me. And they used to laugh. They said, "You're only running 34 blasts." I said, "Yeah, but I like to know what these other guys are doing too." So that's it.
No, and listen, and that's why I said to Coach, like that's where like I started to like start to see stuff with Paramus Catholic and Coach and yourself, because here we are out suburbia, New Jersey, you know what I mean, like 5'8" white guys all over, not very fast, no skill, and here we are doing stuff with this offense. Like, wow, what can we do if we put it in some athletes' hands? So I know the appeal was there, but look, sometimes we just overcoach.
And that was my point. And I think Victor's year was the first year I actually went to 3 receivers. Yeah, so up until that time, I'm and to this day, I'm still a tight end guy. I don't care. I'm going to have a tight end somewhere in here. But Victor and him is the first time I think Tillman threw for almost 2,000 yards. So that was not the normal for Patterson Catholic. I mean, we always have Reggie Brown, who carried the ball 20 times a game, Nigel McGuire, all these, like, we were blue collar. And even with Lorenzo Crawford, he will only get like 7-8 targets a game. And there were a lot of throw ups, like, just throw it up, Lorenzo, go get it, buddy.
Yeah, just go get it
out there. But we became a little more intricate with Vic and those guys, because we had literally 4 receivers that could really, play.
There's no doubt about it. So you spent those years at Patterson Catholic. Now, I'm just curious from my own standpoint, when Patterson Catholic closed down, because I think wasn't Al Muhammad would have been yours, right? If
Aquadim, yeah, Quan was a
Aquadim
PC
was
guy.
second team All County as a freshman,
Yeah,
and led the county in sacks for me his first year at Patterson Catholic. So Aquadim Muhammad was Coach Nods from Wichita calls me up and goes, "I got a guy for you."
Yeah.
I go, "Bring him." And we're getting ready to go to camp the next day. We used to go to the place upstate New York. We packed him up, and next thing I know, I remember telling him, I said, "Oh, this guy's an NFL football player." And he came and started as a freshman, but Elijah Shoemate was also on that team.
Oh, Elijah Shoemate on that team. Oh, I love
Elijah Shoemate played for me for 2 years.
Shoemate, you know, he ends up at Notre Dame starting safety for multiple years. I mean, I remember my first day coaching at Bosco, I walked in and I said, "Who is that?" And they said, I said, "That's Quan." I said, "Yeah. Like, let's talk about him." And then they said, "Oh, he's a Patterson Catholic kid." I said, "I get it. I know, right? Now I just get it."
Yeah, no, those guys at the time we were so loaded. I think we lost 3 games in like 7 years or something. But that crew there with Aquadine and Greg Moore, the other kid from Newark, I mean, we were taking it to another level. And I kind of knew like 3 years before we played a team called Florida Christian Academy or Florida Christian. It was Sean Taylor's high school, and they hadn't lost a game in 3 years, and we beat them. And I remember talking then to Hanson at St. Peter's. He played him a couple of years. He said, "You're going to play some grown men." And I go, "Shit, what did I get myself into?"
We're grown men.
Yeah, and we beat them at Montclair State. And I knew at that point, I go, we may be a little different than, you know, that was kind of a turning point. And then that's when the next year these other guys came to us.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about it too, like the program itself, like it was actually like, you know, there was a kind of a whole turn within the state itself, right? Because this was right when, you know, Bosco was starting to become nationally known, right? They went out to De La Salle and did that work. And now people were kind of looking at it nationally, kind of what things were becoming. And Coach, I mean, had that school stayed intact, you were starting, like you said, you were starting to get a different dynamic that was, you know, more so than just the Patterson kids. Like people were seeking out, I want to go to Patterson Catholic.
Yeah. And it's funny because like Elijah Shoemate he was my ball boy for 2 years. And one of my coaches was friends with his dad, and I had never watched him play. So one Sunday, my friend goes, "Come over to Montclair and you're going to see Elijah Shoemate." I go over there and I go, "What in the hell? Like, here's my ball boy taking it 95 yards to the house," but I had never watched him play. And contrary to people think, I'm going like, wow. And I remember other people in the stands at the time, Bosco, different people, and everybody's trying to get him, not knowing I already had this guy signed, sealed, and delivered. So it's like, wow, this is crazy. Like, we got damn Elijah Shoemate. So he started as a freshman for us that year. And then that next year, he was just phenomenal. His sophomore year, that's when I think, Coach, I think you had a combine at Nutley. And I brought all the guys over to Nutley. And I think me and you had a conversation. I don't know what the hell he ran in the 40, but I remember you talking, and next thing I know, he's ranked. You know, like this kid is everybody. So I give Coach a lot of credit. You were the first person to really put him on the map. Me and our guys knew he was special, but we went to Nutley that morning. And back then, I had to pick up kids from Newark, East Orange, Patterson, in my car. Driving around, dropping them off. And I remember when it was done, I'm looking at him and I'm going, this kid is fucking good. You know, and I knew it at that point. And it was crazy, but even to that size, like I look at the lines now, even at the Bosco and them this year, I went to the playoffs. I mean, our average size the last 3 years was like 6'3", 275 across the line. Like it was brutal. We went from the 5'10", 225-pound guards to 6'3", 6'4". So yeah.
And now, like, Coach, you're thinking Group 1, like maybe a Group 1 has one of those guys, right? So you know what I mean? Like you were just eventually, you know, growing, expanding like to a roster that was not a quote Group 1 roster.
No, not a Group 1 roster at all. And I remember like being discouraged. Passaic County Tech wouldn't play us the last couple of years. Like they wouldn't play us. They made a rule. Yeah, they made a rule that Group 1s couldn't play Group 4s and some shit. I'm like, yeah. All right, okay. Here go the rules. Yeah, we beat them the last time. We beat them the last time we played them with like 35 kids. And you know how you do. You go up to Tech and they got 90 kids on the sideline. And we beat them. And I remember going, everybody's like, oh, God, you're really taking over now. And then next year, my AD goes, we're no longer playing Tech. I go, why not? And they go, oh, group 4s can't play group 1s. I'm like, get the hell out of here. You crazy? No way.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I look at this year and you see, you know, St. Mary's of Rutherford's got to go play DePaul, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I tell you what was interesting is that, like, back then you would have like 2 each year group 1 schools ranked in the top 10 in North Jersey. You know, like it would be a rotating group like you guys were. You'd have a Glen Rock. You'd have maybe a Saddlebrook one year. You may have a Pump. Like
Manchester had a nice little run for a while.
Yeah. I mean, that BPSL, the BPSL, like when people talk about small schools, the BPSL for a very long time was an unbelievable conference for a small school. Like I would take it from around take small schools from around the country. Like they would have a hard time at that same size as we were, right? And playing those group 1 schools and being able to compete because, like I said, you guys had plenty of Division I athletes, but there would be a couple of Division I athletes from the BPSL every year, a few guys every year.
Hell, Glen Rock spurred out a bunch in a period from Grant Adams, all those other guys. I go like they had Division I football
Brown,
Brown, and then they would have these Ivy League kids who are, like, all right, he's got going to Harvard, he's going here. So we had really good football for a while. And the one thing I would say about the BPSL, it was a well-coached league. Like we played some really clean, good football games. Like this is some good football right now.
Yep. And the coaches had pride in the fact that they that they were from that division. It's interesting how time changes and now we have the mega divisions and all that kind of stuff. And I know it's fun for the press, I guess, because you're covering all these different areas, but for the small schools, not all of them, but a lot of them have suffered because they've not been able to hang in the same way. And but it's so interesting to kind of you, Al Diaz, Coach White from South, these are became legends of high school football coaching. And it was amazing how they were all at that same time. And Passaic Tech, you're right. They would have so many guys in that sideline.
Yeah.
We would be like, so I remember, this is funny. One year we're sitting up there and we're going to play Passaic Tech, and they were undefeated. I can't remember what they had. There's all these players. But we go and we realized that on film, I was like, oh, slow down film and do it again. Just don't watch the play. I just want to see the set. So what we realized was, and then I said, okay, now do the plays. We realized if they were running, if they were doing a run play, they had their guys way out wide beyond the numbers. Okay? Receiver. And if they were going to pass, the guys were inside the numbers, usually around the hash. And so we had a tendencies for run pass. And you might remember Lucas Quellar. I think we had
yes, I remember Lucas. Yeah.
Smart football player. He's our safety. And he would call it out, and he just knew, and he knew it was pass, and he jumped in front of the first 2 passes they threw and took it to the house, and they were definitely better than us, but they were on the sideline like, what is going on? And from that point forward, we just rolled them because they were like, how do they know whether it's run or pass? So if it was run, we literally we didn't even cover the pass.
Yeah.
We knew it was run. We just put everybody in the box and didn't let them run us over. And then the pass, we dropped everybody and tried to pick it off. And it was it was wild. But those games were, it was so competitive. The coaches were competitive. But then you go to the all league meetings and everybody was great. And no. So let's talk. I really want to talk about, because me and Derek really respect you, not just as a coach, but as a leader of young men and now a leader of men, right? Because you're in the assembly for a long time as well. What are some of the things, the principles that you brought leadership on the field and then trying to help young men really develop, like that became kind of your core tenets?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing was this really discipline. I mean, the one thing that I think my teams welcomed from me was that they knew that when you walk through those doors, this was going to be structure and this was going to be discipline. In '95, when I got to PC in particular, they'd never made the playoffs. They always had Stanley Jackson, Jason Perry, all these other guys. And people told me I took a $4,000 pay cut to become a head coach. And everybody then joked me like, "Oh, you're wasting your time. PC sucks. Like it's a waste of time." And we walked through the door and basically cleaned house the first year. We went 2-7. And the next year we made the playoffs. And each year we just got better and better. But the kids really just bought into the culture of excellence. Like when you walk through these doors, we're dropping. We don't care what neighborhood you're from. We don't care what your ethnicity is. We don't care about none of that stuff. But you're gonna play PC football. And I think the one thing is the toughness, the structure, and the overall, like the kids wanting to be the best. And I think kids wanted it. They really wanted it. And that's how people said, how do you recruit kids to come to a terrible field? Our locker room, I don't know if you ever saw our locker room. Yes. Our locker room was a gym locker room with no windows. We didn't have windows. So we had a fan that blew in there. And the weight room looked like a garage, like somebody's garage. Like people would donate weights to me. Like at the end, like people were bringing me weights, like, "Oh, I got some stacks for you." And we would lift outside. Like we would have the kids outside lifting because it was too hot to lift inside. And just the work ethic was unbelievable. And really to get the coaches to buy in. Like I had to get guys to buy in, to give them $700 a year to coach to be on my staff. And my promise to them is that you'll have the best food every Monday night than anywhere in America. I would tell them the best thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay you out with the best food every Monday night to watch film.
A lot of coaches can be bribed through that, definitely.
Oh yeah, that works. Food was a major factor.
No, you know what's funny about food? That was my favorite part about film.
Exchange.
I don't know, you know, coaches today I don't know if they do it as much, but like, man, going and getting the food, coming back and eating and watching film, like that was just, I mean, that was the best part about it. And it's funny how football is evolved. There's a lot of things about football that have evolved that are great. And there are some things that you like say, I wish that didn't go away, right? Like I wish that didn't go away. And
yeah, they don't miss. Like I miss Sunday mornings. Like every Sunday morning, I would be there as a optional day. It started off. Sunday was an optional day because we played Saturday afternoons. Optional days became in workout mania for us. And that's when I knew the mindset changed. So at the end of the day, I would go on Saturday after the game, win, lose, draw time. Guys, I'm going to be in 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm going to be in there. If you want to come in, you could come in. Weight room's open, everything. But if you just want to be an average guy, don't worry about it. I'll see you on Monday at the JV game. From that point on, our Sundays became a whole nother work day for us. And kids didn't have to hear because I couldn't tell them because of the Catholic school. I could not tell them not to go to church. Exactly. And I remember that, like, I said, but if you want, I used to tell them, I said, go pray for us. And if you want to come back, I'll still be here at 1 o'clock. But, you know, and kids would stay with me from 8 o'clock in the morning to, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And sometimes it was just the camaraderie. Like they would sit around and talk, and we just had real bonds as coaches, as players. Yeah.
Because I mean, you're also talking kids that are coming from a certain type of neighborhood, right? Or a certain type of
they knew, and they knew they were going to get fed. They knew that at some point we're bringing food in.
Right?
Coach, what are we doing?
Like you said, that camaraderie, that team. They're coming from broken homes. They're coming from here. They don't have that. Like you said, you started with discipline, structure. Kids seek that, right? Because it adds a level of comfort, some normalcy to it. So now that you're all like, here we are on a Sunday. Yeah, man, you want to come in? Like, wow, I'm part of something, right? Like I matter. Let me come around with guys that are like-minded like me. Let me get away from this. Let me do that. Now you start to create that whole team type of bond that just takes the culture to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and it did. And that was the family part of it that, to this day, I mean, my guys are still my guys. Like it's amazing to this day that like Me and Vic hang out, like, we'll go places and it's like, Coach, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm giving sneakers away. You come with me, And it's not like I don't have to call him up to ask for anything or at this point in my life. It's just like, what are you doing? And guys, one of my guys is a lawyer who played for me early on. And the other day he comes to my, luncheon and I'm looking like, what are you doing here? And he goes, I heard about it, so I wanted to be here. That's it. But my guys, they come see me on a regular basis, call me on a regular basis. And I think that's a true success of coaching.
Yeah, and it's a credit to you because when I played with Vic, I mean, listen, we were in that North-South game together. It was just a whole different level of type of player, but not even so much just like his on-the-field stuff. Like, he was the coolest dude. And like I said, when he made it, after that big preseason game and whatnot, I shot him a text, and we had stayed in contact when he was UMass and going back and forth. I mean, I shot him a text, and he answered me. He was like, "Hey, man, appreciate you. Thanks, bro." Like, it was just, and he's always just been that type of dude. Right.
Yeah,
and that's a credit to who his coach was,
Yeah, and it says a lot because Vic's funny. Vic was a basketball player, and that was one of my other successes. I turned these basketball players into football guys, So Vic's godfather is Jimmy Salmon, who's our basketball supervisor and coach here. And Jimmy, he's playing AAU. I know the family, and one day I walked in the gym, and he's missing all these shots. I go, "Hey, Vic, you know what? Basketball gets 1 or 2 scholarships a year. Football, 85 of them, buddy.
Yeah.
85. I remember that summer he showed up. He said, show me, all the stuff. And he gave up AAU basketball and came to us. And it's history from there. Here's a guy who could dunk at 5'10" and 5'11" because he was a dunker. He could jump. And he gets on the football field and he was so green and raw. And Vic is the one who gave up the touchdown against Saddlebrook on a double move to lose the game. That's how green he was. So whoever that kid is, you can tell him I beat the hell out of Victor Cruz for a championship touchdown.
I mean, hell, by the time we got into the North-South game, he was polished.
Oh, yeah.
He made some plays and he was doing stuff. And it wasn't the game itself. What I enjoyed so much about that is that's when, you went away. We were at Rutgers for days.
I remember those.
And we used to we would just talk ball back and forth, like all this kind of stuff. But practice, man, we dialed it up in practice. And Coach Hansen was on staff. Coach Carson was on staff. And, here we are trying to scheme it up on defense. I said, Coach, like, we ain't stopping this dude in practice. Like, this is an all-star game, man. He's going to be gone to do bigger and better things. And, just an absolute specimen in himself. So to see him be successful, get his shot, and then make the most out of his opportunity, it's just a great thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, the point you made of the sales pitch is funny. It's the exact same sales pitch I used to make to players all the time. Football has 85 scholarships. I don't know, 12 maybe, or
maybe 1 a year, 2 a year. Basketball is tough.
Yeah, no, total over 4 years, right? So, right, 2 or 3 a year.
Yeah, if you're not the DeJean Wagners of the group,
no,
that's a huge sales pitch. I think that it's interesting because, your last year as head coach was my last year as head coach. When you were at Hackensack, I was a redneck. I'm like, at least I retired with a legend.
Yeah.
But it's it's interesting from those time periods to now, as far as like from a scholarship standpoint and stuff with the transfer portal and everything. Some of the things that were that made football so amazing have changed slightly. And now you're still helping out, right? Are you still help? You were at St. Joe's for a little bit.
I did. I helped out at St. Joe's for a couple of years, and my youngest is 2 youngest are playing football, so I kind of became a football dad last year.
Okay, good.
So last year I basically went to all of their games. Like, so Fridays I'm on the damn road, like I'm out of here. So they're down in Virginia, so I go up and down the coast just to watch them play.
That's awesome. So it's interesting though how it's changed as far as from a scholarship standpoint. Like, there's still 85 scholarships, but how they're shifting where it's going is different, right? There's still 85 scholarships available, but the way it's going is maybe half of those are going to be allocated to transfer athletes and half to high school.
Yeah, they're taking 24-year-old men, not 18-year-olds now.
Yep.
That's the end of the
think
day.
about
Yeah.
it, for you, Coach, you've seen it, even with your sons getting recruited recently. Like, look at how the dynamics have changed from just those couple years of those guys getting out, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's tough. And for the kids, I still help out kids, and I'm sure you do the same thing. So guys call me up, parents call me up, blah blah blah, and I'll call up guys who I still have connects to. It's just brutal. It really is. I mean, my nephew had committed to Syracuse. He was at West Orange. Fran comes in, Fran cleans house. He takes away all the scholarships, all the kids, and me and Fran have known each other forever. I told his dad, don't take it personal. This is, not where you're supposed. You don't want to be anywhere you don't want. They don't want you.
That's
so he
right.
ended up falling on his feet and landing, with my sons at Hampton. So it worked out. But nowadays, I swear, certain positions, like if you see a kid get a scholarship at running back or quarterback, they're special. If you're an 18-year-old and you're getting a scholarship, they want those guys already proven, seasoned in there. They're not looking for those guys. So Division III, Division II is just going to become stronger and stronger.
Well, one of the things I tell the kids, and you just hit on it, is that you've got to go where you wanted, because you can't get focused just on the brand. Like, yes, if you're that guy,
bells and whistles.
Okay,
you can bells and whistles,
Yeah, but you can't get focused on one brand just because you've watched them on TV. You've got to go where you're wanted to have the opportunity to play. I think that's the biggest thing that's changed from, and it was starting to change when you were at Hackensack, but it huge change from when you were at Patterson Catholic to now.
Oh yeah.
Where you could get players that were, and you probably had them at Patterson Catholic, that were really good athletes that needed development, that a guy would take, right? He would take them. He'd say, this kid's tall, he's got good athleticism, I can mold. Now, if they're not ready-made, they're going to go a level lower, right?
Yep. The Monmouth days are over. I remember Monmouth was one of the places I could call up and be like, listen, coach, and he's been there forever. This guy is going to be a great project. I had a kid, David Kennedy, who didn't even start for me to his senior year, ended up going to Monmouth and being a team captain. Those days are really tough. He was a project. He was a project. Yep.
What do you think that, like, you have your youngest kids, you're going to advise them as they're going through things. I have an 8-year-old, right? That's just beginning. I just started playing tackle football this year. What do you think you're going to have to say to kids as far as how do you want to get to that? Like, what becomes their focus? Because, like, for years, my focus was, leverage your athletic ability to get yourself an opportunity to go get an education, hopefully get a scholarship, right? That is not exactly the pitch now, right? So what do you think? Like, what would you advise, like, coaches to advise their kids that are going through the process in high school now?
Yeah, one of the main things is what you guys do, like exposure. Like, you cannot be afraid to go to Rutgers camp. You can't be afraid to go to NUC. You can't be afraid to go to Zone 6 or whatever it may be.
Right.
You have to compete. And the one thing I think the guys who I still stay in touch with college-wise and deal with, they're like kids that are competitive. Then you got the kids who kind of hide. And unfortunately, my last couple of years at Hackensack, I couldn't convince kids to, like, look, who cares? I got lambasted for scrimmaging Bergen Catholic one year, and I'm looking like, what's the big deal? We can't scrimmage Bergen Catholic. I said, hell if we can't. We're going to scrimmage Bergen Catholic. Like,
Coach,
don't
when
run from competition.
When I was at Bosco, we played you in the regular season.
We played twice.
To Hackensack on a Friday night. Like,
I had a parent take one of their kids out of that game. I've never experienced that in my life. That's toughness. I remember,
and that's when you knew.
I knew my days were numbered. I knew. I played Paramus Catholic twice. While I was there, and why don't you set up the good sisters of the blind? Like, no, I want to play good football. I'm not getting excited about beating certain teams, and I just don't get that. So you can't run from competition. I think your best players who are going to be scholarship kids are going to rise to the occasions when it comes to testing, when it comes to being competitive, when it comes to being multi-sport athletes. Don't hide behind, I'm only getting ready for this, that, and the other. I've always encouraged. I think PC was a prime example. We only had 300 students. We may have had 100 boys. Everybody had to play everything.
Yeah.
Like, look, we need you. The basketball coach, look, I need this kid to play power forward. Chenry and TJ Clemens come play basketball and give me my 6 foul. And I encouraged him. Then he would tell me, this kid sucks. He can't hit a foul shot. We got to get him over here. Come play football, But now these guys want to play year round and personal trainers. And I think there's just too much pacifying. Like, it's just really too much. And I think there still are gritty, tough kids out there, but there's less and less of gritty, tough parents out here.
I agree.
Great point. You're 100% right, Coach.
There's 2 huge points to that. Like, parents are not as gritty, and then the outside influences from it could be a trainer, it could be a club that they belong to, where they're saying, if you don't do this year round, you know what I mean, then you're not going to get XYZ, and it's so not true.
They're just trying to put the dollars in their pockets because now they can have the kid year round.
Reggie, my kid's 8 years old. Derek has to listen to me say this all the time. My kid's 8 years old. Okay, he plays travel baseball, but he plays basketball in the winter. All right, plays basketball in the winter. That's what he plays. He loves it. And they're like, well, our team, they don't exert, like, they don't tell you you're not going to be able to play because he's a very good athlete. But they're like, well, the whole team is practicing. I'm like. I can get out there and throw a ball with him, for an hour. Yeah. He can feel grounders. I can take him to he doesn't need to do all the. He's enjoying his basketball season. Let him enjoy his basketball season. When we come to baseball or track, he'll enjoy baseball and track. When we get ready for football, not that you can't overlap. You can, but I always say keep the primary sport in that season. I'm not saying you can't do both, but if you're in football season, that's the primary sport. If you're in basketball season, that's the primary sport. Yes, you want to work out, all those things. You want to go, that's fine. And that keeps them eventually when they do choose, maybe as a junior and senior in high school where they're going to focus, or eventually where they're going to choose a college. Because once you go and choose your sport in college, if you play football in college, you're not playing any other sports. You'll never get that back again, right? And that's the thing I try to get them to understand. Like, enjoy that time period.
That was one. I had guys going to baseball games. I'm like, I had that in my life. Like, guys, it's football season. Like, we're not going to a Babe Ruth game, And my dad is the coach. I'm like, huh? Well, tell your dad to call me.
Like that makes it even worse.
Yeah, you got to keep the main thing, and in the long run, like, and you talk to so many players, like the players that did that got to really like do multiple sports, when they're in football season, play football. When they go to college, if they played sports in college, and they realize, oh my God, this is a job, okay, that I have playing this sport. You will long for that time period where you got. But if you just play, I found that players who played one sport from the time they're kids, even if they go to college, most of those kids do not succeed at how they're capped out and
they're burnt out.
They're burnt out, and they're not.
And they're more susceptible to injuries because they're doing the same movement constantly over. And the girls, I'm the recreation director still in Patterson. These girls going down with these ACL injuries all the time. Like, play volleyball, play softball, do something else, but don't play basketball year round. Like, and you need a break from each other. Like, you have kids, you need a break from. Yep.
Right. Well, what about different trends, right?
Different sports use different muscles, right? And to constantly a fully rounded, there's a reason that we call it an athlete, right? And you're an all-around athlete. You need to do different things throughout the, you know what I mean? Like, and like you said, when the kids now are so pigeonholed into doing one thing, we're talking about, 24-year-old kids needing Tommy John surgery because they've been throwing balls for how long, doing whatever. Yep. Like, that's not the right way to do it,
No,
I always knew Thanksgiving Day, the day after I was going to basketball practice, and that was the worst day of the year, right? Because I was sore as hell from football. But these guys, they just don't. It's just not a thing anymore. It's really tough to see these guys go pigeonholed, and now you're seeing the injuries, right? Just competition. right? That's what
Yep.
you're really looking for.
Yeah, and Patrick Mahomes is the poster boy for it. Like, I wish they would talk more about Mahomes being a 3-sport star. Like, he is the
Right.
best player in the NFL who played 3 sports, whose dad was an MLB baseball player who encouraged
Right.
him to play 3 sports. You know, he easily
Right.
could have been a MLB guy, or I hear he was
Right.
great in basketball too. This guy could have been a sport, you know, a pro probably in any
Right.
sport. You know,
I mean, Aaron Judge for the Yankees, right?
yeah,
Like 3-sport stud.
yep, yep.
And I think you see that too. Like when you see ex-pro players, you always see them encouraging their kids to play multiple sports. You rarely see an ex-pro player like, okay, you know, you're going to have to play this from the get-go, and that's all you're going to play. Guys who make it to that level realize when it comes to their kids, like that was one of the things that they enjoyed about their time period as a kid coming up, that they got to play multiple sports, and that it honestly develops
you mentally
as a total athlete.
Yeah.
Like, what you
because
have to
now
think
in my
about.
mind, now I'm a competitor, and whatever I do, I can go and do it, right? Because, but and it also just added a little bit of like a breath of fresh air. You're not always doing the same thing, right? Like going from season to season. Like I remember, it didn't matter how sore I was from football. Going to basket, you were jacked up for something else, right? Like, all right, here it is, and you know, maybe I wasn't, you know, obviously a better football player than basketball player, but that doesn't mean that now it was just a whole different type of thing when you move to that different sport. And I think the mental edge too is a lot that dealt with it.
Yeah, and it's good for socialization. I think the kids change. I know my younger kid, he played baseball. He had one group of friends that were baseball guys. He had another group of friends who were the football guys. Then he had his neighborhood guys. Yeah,
it's just like that. Yeah,
it's healthy. It's just healthy.
Yep. And I think that part is maybe the most important of all, is the socialization with different groups of people, right? Over and over again, because you play football. Like my son plays football at the other side of town, totally different group of kids than where he plays basketball with. Like totally different group of kids, all great kids, totally different. Like he likes these kids for these reasons, and he likes these kids for these reasons. And when those kids come over, like he likes this about them, and then these, you know, and I think those, and then when he plays baseball, that's a totally different group of kids. And when he runs track, it's a totally he runs track with his kids from Catholic school that he goes to, right? So I'll tell you, this is funny. This will make you laugh. It just kind of came to my head. I was a public school guy who now my kids in Catholic school and private schools. You know, obviously you've been in both. You've been in Catholic school and public school. But it's funny because like I just like that the fact that in sports he's playing with these kids, and when he goes to school he's with these kids. When you know, it's to me it helps make the kid well-rounded. We forget about making our kids well-rounded. You know?
And you know, people from, in our case, from the hood. My son went to St. Joe's, transferred to St. Joe's. One weekend after a game, one of the parents flew them down to Miami for the Miami somebody's game and flew back. And the Teterboro airport in a private jet. So when he asked me, he goes, Dad, you know, Blank's dad asked if I want to go to, you know, the Miami game. I go, yeah, whatever. And I go, well, how you getting there? He goes, oh, his jet. And I go,
you're like, wait, what?
What do you mean? I've never flown out of damn Teterboro in a jet. So they flew to the Miami game and flew back. And when he gets back, he goes, Dad, his house had a 15-car indoor garage. Like, that's the diversity of like here. And this is somebody he's going to be friends with for the rest of his life. You know, the rest of his life. Here's a guy who's like, all right, you know, Jaden's a good kid. Dad, can he come with us? So he took like 4 of the kids to Miami for a football game on his private jet.
That's incredible.
I hate to say that. We're not getting too many chances like that in Patterson. You may get the dollar bucks.
Like,
that's what sports does for you. That's what sports does for you. You're bringing together,
it creates different
groups of people from all different types of walks of life, and they get the opportunity to get to know each other, right? That socialization, you get to know why someone thinks this way, why they compute themselves in a certain way, like why they carry themselves a certain way, and you get to understand that. I mean that's what listen, that's why I as much as I love football and being a football guy, that's why I love multiple sports, because I'm like, oh, I get to know these, and me too. Like me, I get to go to these parents. Like when I'm always around football guys, it's all like high testosterone dads, everything. And baseball guys are totally different. Like it's totally different animal. Like if I'm yelling like a crazy person in the stands, like I would at a football game, you're the only one. You're the only one yelling at that baseball game. So, you get to kind of learn how those things are. And I think it's good, and the kids learn it. And so listen, I lightly touched on it, but I want to talk about, before I let you go, you've done amazing things. Like, you've been a head of rec department for forever and a day, right? And you really done great things. Like I've seen this stuff online with, like, your son was doing with Zone 6 and bringing some stuff in there. And obviously you've been a football coach for a long time. You're an assemblyman. And we probably could talk for hours about that. What are like some of the common things that you think, like you've done three different things, like being the rec director and being an assemblyman and being a football coach. Those are three different things, right? And a lot of people would struggle with that. How do you manage all that kind of stuff, and how do you bring what you do to each one of those things and make it all work?
Yeah, I mean, I started off as a teacher and a baseball coach at Eastside, so my kids never knew that I was a baseball coach, that. And people, the other day were people like, well, was one of the most amazing things in your career? Winning the Passaic County Baseball Championship was one of the most amazing things in my career, because I took kids from Patterson who never won anything, and that was the start of things. And being a classroom teacher for 9 years kind of put everything in perspective for me to move on to these other careers. Like I taught special ed for 9 years at Eastside, which I loved every year of working at Eastside. And
every second of it, man.
I love Eastside was absolutely the best. I would get to work at 7 o'clock in the morning with coffee. I didn't even drink coffee till I started teaching and read my newspaper and the camaraderie, like you talked about. But building dreams, I mean, that's where I sat and really like visualized, taking a chance and taking a pay cut to go to PC, and then getting involved with the community. I mean, I've been at Recreation for 25 years now. The mayor who hired me basically said he liked my work ethic. He said, you're everywhere. Like, how do you do all the stuff you do? And at the time, I wasn't doing a lot. I was in sports, really. And that translated to this career here. And in turn, becoming an elected official, I mean, I got to be honest, to this day, it really is amazing that I'm in the State House. Like, I had never been to the State House before. People, I literally could give a damn about going to the State House before me. I cared about coaching, kids, whatever here. And I went to the State House one time when Eastside's basketball team won a state championship, and they invited me to come with them to the thing. So I was a supporter, and I walked in. I had no clue of what really went on. And then 2 years later, I'm elected to the General Assembly. And it's changed my life, because now I'm one of 121 people that makes all of the laws for New Jersey. But more importantly, I'm one of the regular guys who sat in the classroom, who sat on the sideline, who sat in the dugout, who has 4 sons that can relate to things that are important to this regular dudes. Like, I just think the legislations and the things that I work on are stuff that you guys can relate to. When I do sports legislation, when I do legislation for education or public safety, these are the things I live. So I'm not a lawyer. I mean, probably majority of these guys are lawyers and all types of, multiple MBAs and all this stuff. And I'm just a regular guy who still hangs out in gyms and football fields,
That's awesome.
Right.
That is awesome.
That's absolutely phenomenal, right? Because you're taking, politicians for the most part, right? Everybody just always thinks they just talk, it's this, it's that, but you've really taken it to another level and used your experiences of like, guys, this is how it really is. So let me bring that to the forefront to you, and then kind of push for certain things. And like, it's huge to have an advocate actually in the building that's been there on the front lines, knowing this is kind of how it is.
Yeah, I don't have to Google. I tell them I don't have to do a lot of Googling when it comes to kids or sports or stuff like that. And I never forget, there was a young lady, assemblywoman, she wanted to ban tackle football. And I go to her like, all due respect, I have all due respect for you. I gave her all the statistics where there are more injuries in girls basketball and more concussions and all this. And when we were said and done, she was like, "Thank you so much." But she had just been watching TV talking about we should ban. And I think there's another state up now talking about
California.
Yeah, like, are you out your mind? Like, these guys, like for us in particularly, they would have never gotten to college if they didn't get that scholarship.
Opportunities.
You know, they don't. I got guys who are lawyers, doctors now who made their way through sports to get to Boston College, to get to Notre Dame and all this stuff. If they didn't play sports, they would have not had that opportunity. You know, and it's easy for you when you have a trust fund and you got a bunch of money for your kids to go to school to say, we should play flag football. No, flag football is not going to pay the bills for these guys. You know, not at all.
That's a ginormous point, man. The leaders. So that's my whole thing is that they're lawyers and they might be accomplished lawyers, right? But are they? But a lot of them are probably learning on the job about leadership, right?
Literally.
You already had a certain tremendous knowledge on how to lead people, and you had. I think to me, it's easier if you already have some level of leadership skills, and then you can learn, oh, here are the legislative process. You could consult with obviously a legal team to help you through some of the things that might be difficult from a legal standpoint. But the leadership is an aspect that you bring, like you're able to recognize point by point what might be helpful for the people that you serve versus where some people are just agenda driven, right? It's not leadership driven, it's agenda driven. And leadership requires understanding the people that you represent and what are the things that those people are looking to have happen, and to be able to recognize that and then articulate to other people that are in the assembly. And a lot of times I think that gets lost, like on politicians, is that, listen, leadership is the most important thing as a politician, right? And not your law degrees.
It's a major thing. And I got to be honest with you, sometimes I see some of the weakest leaders are the guys who never played sports, who never were involved, who were just isolated on computers. And, you know, like you said, they had their own agenda. I'm going to build up my career. But the guys who I meet, regardless of Republican or Democrat, usually the guys who I relate to more are the guys who are, you know, parents who, you know, were at least Little League baseball coaches who understand that, you know, diversity is important regardless of political parties and stuff like that. But when there's a guy, the guy who never played nice in the sandbox makes a terrible politician. And I see it, you know, up close and personal. Like, if you did not have those relationships, like we talked about, socialization and switching from season to season and structure and, you know, making about, you know, we, not me, those guys just don't relate to what's important to everybody, regardless of, like I said, affiliation or zip code.
That's right. And it's about people. And that's those are things that sports do that's just different. It's amazing because sports have become, I mean, it's always been a pretty big thing, but it's become a huge business. It's become a huge what's the word? I don't know. It's very visible. So everybody wants to tag themselves to sports, right? In some ways,
it's become political.
Right.
I mean, I deal with guys now more as a mentor, and some of the stuff that they deal with as coaches, it becomes like, you know, I had a situation at Hackensack about a school board member's son. And I've benched my friends' kids before, like my friends, like, and we would talk and I'd be like, look, don't cross this line. Like, believe me, trust me. And like, I've never had that ever before in my life where not playing a school board member's kid was going to be a part of you not wanting to coach anymore. Like the day I came to the fact that I'm having a conversation about a kid who didn't like the game, who didn't love the game, and I don't play him, and the dad is, you know, upset. You know, that's the tough part. Or, you know, you have guys like getting ran out, like, you know, we've read the stories in New Jersey. Some guys who are great guys.
You see it every year now.
Yeah,
it's like guys are
And I got guys off record who tell me they will never coach again. And they go like, are you going to consider, or people call me every blue moon? And I go, no, absolutely not. I'm not. I'll help out. I'll do anything. Hell, I'll be the best assistant coach you can find. But me being at the head of a program again, it's just way too much politics in it for me. My regular politics is enough. Sports politics is kind of ruined. No way. No way.
You only need so much politics in your life.
You can,
not
you can only get pulled in, and you can also only get pulled in so many different directions.
Oh,
right?
Yes. I want to. You want to go out and coach, but in the meantime, and you got, and sure you've been there. You got to talk to the vice principal on the fence for half an hour during practice while your team is getting ready for a big game.
Right.
You're getting pulled to the side over some nonsense. Those days I don't admire the guys for it anymore.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt about it, and that's the biggest part. That's is continuing to become more and more and more of that. You know, everybody wanting to have input as to what you do. People, I mean, it was Red Bank was Derek obviously was my right hand guy there, and you know, as soon as leadership changed, like we had the greatest AD when we first got there. He was unbelievable, and then we had interim was fine. And once that changed, once my main AD left, even though we had an interim who was fine, the clock was ticking. We knew the clock was ticking. we knew, like when we played you, like we knew, like I think one of the reasons why the kids played so well is kind of we knew that might be like it. You know, like we kind of had a feel that could be it. Like, you know, I gone through so much stuff just that year alone, and Derek. You know, could vouch for it, and
it's a learning experience for all of us. I'll tell you.
They tag you real quick. I mean, I got written up one time for raising money to get neutral colored gray uniforms, and I'm sitting in the superintendent's office over gray. And you know, at a point, gray became a neutral for everybody.
Yes, that was a big deal.
And this is not, you know, hack and sack. What are you doing? We were 9-2. We were loaded. We were good. And I'm sitting in there talking about damn uniforms. So I knew at that point, it was a couple of years before, I'm going, and I wanted to leave at that point. I go, you know what? If I'm going to argue about uniforms, this is not for anymore. You know, I'm done. And I remember a couple of guys going, no, you're going to be okay. But every year there was a new thing. If it wasn't uniforms, it was, you know, somebody threw a spitball on the bus. You know, it was just nuts. Like I had never experienced that at Patterson Catholic in my life, or Eastside, you know.
Yep. No, and that is. And that's just continuing to change. I mean,
and it's only snowballing.
It's become tougher, especially public schools become tougher in some of that area.
Difficult.
But I'm sure in all schools they're different, regardless public or private. There are different things going on at every place, and again, I think it comes down to like who keeps getting hired in leadership, right? Like, do they have look? It used to be. And you know this, it used to be your athletic director was a guy who was a high-level high school coach, right? He knew he was a great coach, whether it's football. Most of the time in the old days, it was probably football, basketball, or baseball kind of guys. But they were high-level coaches at that level, graduate to athletic director. And a lot of those athletic directors eventually graduated to vice principal or principal, right? So you had somebody
to superintendents, these were the guys that was used to working with.
Yeah. Everybody was involved at some way, shape, or form at that ground level. And now you don't see that anymore.
No. That's changing. Now you can get a PhD without really ever having to have done any of these things, right? And go right into leadership without
having to go through the nitty-gritty,
without having taught or coached and understand the dynamics of the school, and you know, just because you understand, I don't know, it could be test scores, it could be
passed.
It could be you just happen to be really smart and they're putting you in leadership. Doesn't mean you're a leader, but you're very smart.
And that was one of the reasons for me too, like that. I was like, you know, why I kind of got out of education was, you know, here I am teaching high school special ed, and, you know, we're rocking and rolling in my classroom. And then I'm getting told that, no, you need to do it this way, or you need to do it this way. Well, look, bud, like, no offense, but like, have you ever been in my classroom? Right? Like, I get all those books and classes that you passed about leadership within the school and test scores and all that. That's great for you, man. But like, come to my classroom, right? It's the same thing. I was like, hey, you want an observation? Just come on in any day because this is what we do, you know? So when those guys wearing suits and stuff like that are trying to tell you the best way or how you should handle your classroom, when it's, like, that's when it started to get a divide for me.
Yeah.
Leaders empower the people underneath them to make their own decisions, right?
Yeah.
You want them to make their own decisions about education. You want them to make their own decisions of how they want to coach. And then if something really serious comes up, okay, you address that. But what we've gotten into in a lot of the schools with sports is I'm going to tell the coach how he should do all the things he needs to do. I'm not talking about X's and O's, but how you should be handling the kids and how, instead of empowering them to lead with what our values are as a school system or what empower them to lead, we're hovering over them. And then you get great coaches, a lot of great coaches that leave the industry or listen, I think, it's a shame to me that a fantastic coach like yourself doesn't want to be a head coach anymore. And it's not, has nothing to do with you. Like, to me, like, that's one of the great leaders that is no longer leading young men. And it's because we've now tried to tell guys that already have that leadership thing down pretty good. Like, the dynamic, like, and I don't know why, I just, maybe because people haven't played sports, but this kid over here needs these buttons pushed to accomplish things.
Yeah.
And this kid over here needs these different buttons pushed, right? And this kid over here, you don't have to say anything to, and he's going to do everything you need him to do, right? And a lot of people don't realize that that's what leadership is. Like, I know what this kid wants. I know what this kid needs, and it's different than him. And you know what? This kid, I might have to get on a little bit.
Yeah.
He succeeds when that happens.
Yeah, and you hit it out the park. That's it. I mean, great leaders create more leaders, not followers. Like, now people want followers. They don't want leaders. And
they want a bunch of yes men, right?
They want followers. I don't want you to ask a damn question. I want you to follow. You believe what I say. You cannot start. One of my things was I always wanted guys to become head coaches. Wanted guys to become D coordinators. Guys to go to college. I encourage that. Like, I didn't go, well, if you go here, you're gonna bust. You're gonna be a bust. Like, no, go take a shot. And the mentality now, as we see on the national stages, people don't want to create leaders. They want people to follow them. That's
yes
it.
Men. Bunch of yes men.
Nothing more needs to be said. That was fantastic, Coach. Thanks so much for coming on. We definitely have to have you back on again soon. It's just great talking to people that understand a lot about the world and understand what can help people most importantly. And you're a fantastic leader. I've always admired you. A reason I brought up the Dunkin' Donuts is, man, like, from the very first, like, I was nervous the first time I had to exchange film with you. Like, this was Benji Wimberly, I was a head coach. And I'm telling you this, Derek.
One of the greatest dudes in the world, bro.
He sat there and he talked to me. And, I know who you are. I know what you're trying to do. Like, I'm excited for you. Like that encouraged me as a coach. I mean, I was 30 years old, first time being head coach. And I had only been coaching football for 2 years because I was in the business world. So I'd only been coaching football for 2 years. So and when I exchanged film with him, it was like, to me, I was like, when I went back to practice, I was excited to go back to practice. I was excited because I was like, wow, this guy who's doing all these great things, like, just encouraged me. And, and that's why I say, that's why the film exchange to me was the greatest. It was the greatest.
It was the best. I had guys for, like I said, years. When I was the assistant coach at Eastside, I was the film exchange guy. So Donald Davis would send me places to exchange tape, and then I would come back with, like, food, or they're like, "Where the hell are you at now?" I said, "Man, I met this guy over at the Hot Grill. Shit, I'm hungry." I come in with food, and it was just like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Me and Alan Dean would sit on Maple Ave and talk to each other. People thought we hated each other because of football. Me and Al became friends. I spoke at I spoke at his retirement dinner, and people are like, "Oh my God!" And to this day, the Glen Rock guys still stay in touch with me. Like they'll see me or text me or whatever. But they thought it was amazing that I came to Al's retirement dinner. I said, "Why the hell wouldn't I come to Al's retirement dinner? We're gonna fight on the field, but when we get off the field, we're great. That's it. No problem. Me and John Irada up at PCTI, whatever. We're going to a beefsteak next week. That's the camaraderie I think some of the young guys don't get and understand. Right. And back to the days, how the hell would I not know Mark Mickens if it wasn't for football? Me and Mark still stay in touch to this day because I'm at Mouse Davis's clinic at the old Giant Stadium, and I may have used one pass play out of that whole clinic, but that was it. But
that was part of it. And listen, Coach, like I said, growing up where I did and whatnot, and then you just being around and kind of stayed in touch and then doing all the other stuff. Like, you've always been such a good mentor, always like a guy that I can contact in terms of anything. And you didn't know me from a hole in the wall, right? So, it was just one of those things. Like, I really appreciate, you continuing to do what you do, and not just on the field, off the field as well with everything that's going on. It's just always been such a pleasure. So I appreciate it. And look, I got to show you this too, right? So, look at that.
Wow. That's a classic. That's a classic.
So North-South game, helmet's still there.
I remember those days. That's amazing. That's really good stuff. Yeah.
That's it, man. But thank you, Coach, so much. Really appreciate you coming on. Hope everything is well, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Take care. God bless.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Take care.
Bye. That was great. You want to say hi, Troy, real quick? Okay.
He's a good dude, bro.
I have a visitor that was home today because he wasn't feeling that good
yesterday. What's up, bud? Too much time in the snow.
He's better now, though. He's better now.
Oh, I'm sure he's better now, though. I'm sure once you got that day off, buddy.
Yeah. Well, he had to go through some things last night. A couple stuff came out of the tummy, and then now he's all right.
Oh, not fun. Never a good thing, buddy.
All right, kid. Let me finish up with Coach here. That was a fantastic podcast, and I'll tell you what. I really enjoyed. He's a fantastic leader. Really is a fantastic leader, and he gets it. And I think one of the great things about this podcast is that we're able to talk to these fantastic coaches as people, right? And I think that you really comes across, and it's probably what I enjoy most about it, which is why I'm always and a wide variety of guests, obviously, but you get to really talk to those people, from players to coaches to college guys. But I think what's so interesting is how, like, to me, the one thing that is a shame is, like, man, Benji Wimberly, he's still a young guy. He's been around forever, but he's still young.
When he left Hackensack, it was like, what's the next? Like, where's he going to end up next? And
right.
And look, and I understand he's gone into different ventures, and like you said, he's got kids that are playing and doing their thing. Like, he hasn't just like gone behind closed doors and we've never seen him again. He's continued to impact this state and on a national level in terms of what he's doing. But it really is a shame because I'm sure every coach always wants to be a coach, right? I think Nick Saban said it the best, right? Like, he was like, look, when you become a coach, you think that's always going to be how it is, right? And then it becomes where you're making that decision. And look, it's a shame, and you see kind of some of those things, but it's also, what he's giving back, whether or not guys take it from him, right? Like, why wouldn't you sign up to listen to whatever he has to say?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, you want to talk about doing the most with the least, right? Or just all of the things that he does. And then you kind of see it start to trickle down, right? Because his son's doing a lot of good stuff, not just, we always talk about sports and this kind of stuff, but like, this all trickles into like communities and things of that nature, and just generally creating good human beings. And I think that's credit to what sports really do when it's done the right way.
Well,
right? You're creating better people.
One of the things I thought he tried to do, although I knew it was going to be hard, but I think he was in the right idea. I think he brought it to legislation, like to get a coach's
protection.
Protection. And I'll tell you what I think is interesting along the fact with that, like, is how do we get all of us as coaches to start to dictate the values that we want in our industry. Because in the old days, coaching was a side thing. Okay.
Now it is a career path.
It is a real career path, but we haven't, as a group, even though we have the AFCA and they're starting to do some of that stuff, but that doesn't trickle down to high school as much, right?
No, because high school coaches still align themselves more so with teachers than they do with coaching itself. Now, I understand that teaching is coaching and coaching is teaching, right? Like there are very close similarities. So why can't there be some type of umbrella where now your teacher contract also protects you with your coaching contracts? I mean, we're seeing excellent guys lose their jobs or step away or do all this other thing or do whatever where they're no longer in coaching because outside influences or someone who doesn't understand sports is now dictating to them what they can or can't do within their program itself. Like he said, right? Leaders create leaders who can empower others, right?
Yep.
Like that's your thing. And you said it best, right? Like you want to allow the people underneath you to lead on their own. Yeah, you may have to tweak here or tweak there. Or, hey, understand everything is under this umbrella, but that's your spot. That's your team. That's your classroom. Make it happen. And if at the end of it, like everything is successful, that's the most important part, because a lot of people say it's all about the kids, but is it really all about the kids?
Right. Well, I think it really, that's a really good point. And when you focus on guidelines and values versus rules and penalties, I think that like guidelines and values give you the flexibility to kind of move in the direction that you need to move and be fluid if you need to be fluid. Rules and penalties restrict you.
They restrict growth. They restrict growth.
And not that you don't need rules. Like no one's saying you don't need rules.
We're not. Yeah, exactly. Like we're not saying that you need to you don't like. Look,
yeah.
It's just that's not the first thing you cover in a team meeting when I'm a new head coach and I walk in. All right, these are the rules and these are the staples of what's going to happen. Well, no, we're going to talk about how we are going to do things as a team, how it's going to be this or that. Like you said, it's guidelines with flexibility because it's a team aspect. And yeah, coach said it too. Discipline, structure, right? But within that discipline and structure, I have guidelines, I have flexibility, because we know everything is a case-by-case basis, right? There are, this guy's going through something, like there are personal aspects to every little thing. And when I think you embrace that and understand that and now cater to those kids for their own individual situations, you create a sense of comfort. And now those kids really look at it like, hey, this guy cares, right? It's not a cookie cutter method anymore where everybody is this. We all got our own individual things going on and whatnot. And now when you can take that in terms of and kind of run with it from there, that's when I think you see more success.
And that's a big thing. I like, not just from people above the coaches level, but even younger coaches is like, hey, embrace the fact that there are other people that have, like wisdom. You know, when I was young, and you probably, you're starting to get older now, you're probably really starting to see it. It's like when you were
no kidding. I look like an OG.
When you were young, although at least you have no gray in the beard. That's a little bit.
Oh, it's there. It's there.
I see a little. Yeah, I see a little. What I think is so interesting is that
the younger guys just don't realize what they could actually pull from the older guys.
Yes.
Right? They just look at
you don't have to run their system, okay?
you don't have to teach. We're not talking X's and O's. We're not talking, hey, this guy's like, if I don't do something, I'll be running. Or, hey, you can't get no water because you're right. We're not talking about that stuff, dude. We're talking about guys that have been through situations, right? Issues, things that troubleshooting, right? Whatever you want to call it.
Right.
The more experience, the more things they've seen. And even if it's the same, it could be the same thing, but maybe you're not going to they'll tell you, don't handle it this way, right?
Right.
Like an OG, right?
Or you may
is
want to
someone
think
that
about it this way. You
just
may want to think
wisdom.
about. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
just take it, you know.
No. And you listen. As many coaches as I talk to, you obviously, because you're so good at booking the podcast, talk to way more people than I do. So I talk to a lot of people, but you talk to an infinite amount of people. So I think that's I think that's what's helped you over the years. I don't think
Networking, man. Just
other
talk
guys
to
don't
people.
do it as much. They don't do it.
Well, because I'll tell you why they don't do it as much is because they're not comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So like you sometimes, man, you just got to go and shoot a shot, right? Like and listen, everybody wants to hide behind the damn phone and do all that kind of stuff. Like nobody hey, I'm going to just take an online clinic. Bro, there's something being said about walking into a Glazier clinic and sitting next to somebody that's the same. Like we're all here for a reason, but just sparking up these conversations. I mean, now with the way social media is and this all stuff, I can talk to coaches on the other side of the country or have Zoom calls and do whatever. Like, man, everybody is, there's just there's an infinite amount of knowledge that you can take something from literally every single person that you talk to. But in order to do that, you got to put yourself out there and talk to them. You know what I'm saying? And look,
True.
Am I fortunate because, where I grew up, how I grew up and all that kind of things in terms of, being around great football coaches that set a precedent in terms of here's what you got to do or here's how things go and whatnot. I was just always around those guys that preached that. Talk to people, man. Go and be a sponge. Sometimes it's just be a fly on the wall. Let them talk about whatever. Don't say anything. Just take everything because you never know when you're going to do something, right? Like, guys, and like we were talking about multiple sports and all that kind of stuff. Like the same thing happens with coaching. Guys get pigeonholed into, hey, I was a receiver, so I got to coach receivers. I only know receivers and now it's only offense or it's this. It's like, no, expand yourself, man. Go sit in a clinic about a D-line when you don't know anything that's going on and just because you never know, a job may pop up. They need a D-line coach. Don't be afraid to do that kind of stuff.
I think that's incredibly important. I think that it has to continue to, we go forward. It's a huge thing from a learning standpoint, and the game as it continues to evolve, like
it's just going to keep changing and changing and changing. And if you're not on it or willing to, adjust a little bit. Now, I'm not saying you got to throw everything out the window, dude. Right. Like,
no.
But at the same time, if you're not adjusting, you are not going to be in this game very long, or it's going to frustrate you so much that you walk away on your own.
I'll tell you what, one of the most fun times I had recently as a coach was our youth football dinner from the other night.
I know, I saw it.
Oh man, was it fun? Was it fun?
Yeah,
too?
because it's all about. I saw Finn there. I saw Jordy there. I saw those guys.
Yep. Yeah. Oh man, they had a blast.
Shirley Temples, Troy.
Shirley. Although he drank Coca-Cola. Well, no, Pepsi. Pepsi. And he's not allowed to drink that. But he comes over to me. He goes. They have the Shirley Temple bar there. He's like, I can get whatever kid drink I want. He's like, I can get a Coke if I want it. I said, oh, Coke. He's like, well, Pepsi. I said, all right, go ahead, go get Pepsi.
Yeah, nice.
Drank a couple of Pepsis. Drank a couple of Pepsis. Next thing you know,
he was flying. Dude. We should have timed his 40 then.
All right, I'll let you go. Great podcast.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
You got it.
All right, peoples.
All right.